To get even more control over our elements in our page, we have the position properties in CSS. So that's on the bottom right corner of our cheat sheet. Now let's take a look what they do. So over here, I have W3 School's documentation open up, and they have a very good explanation on the different values that the position property has. They're static, relative, fixed, absolute, and sticky. Now by default, all elements in HTML has the default value of being static. That means the elements actually show up in order in which they are written in HTML. But we can actually change that behavior by setting the position value to any of the others. So now let's take a look. For that, I've actually created a very simple page. It has a header, the main area. The main area has some headline, some sidebar, some content, and a footer over here. So now let's take a look. Let's say if I want to move this particular header a few pixels here or there, what do I do? First, to do that, I'm going to open inspect element. I'm going to select this, and over here I'm going to just change the property over here to relative, position relative. I did that, and now it actually has no effect. So if I add it or remove it, it has no effect. But in combination of adding the position relative, if I add, let's say, a top property or a bottom property, left or right, I can actually mention how many pixels I want to move this particular element. So let's say from top, I'm going to say, let's say 10 pixels. You see, it moved 10 pixels from the top. Now you will notice that when this particular element moved 10 pixels from the top, it actually had no effect on the other elements. It did not push any of the other elements away. It just moved its position. So that's what we get. So let's say if I want to move it left or right, or let's say I want to move it on top. So I can just make it 0, or let's say negative 10 pixels. And you see it's stuck to the top of the page. I want to move it left or right. I can simply say left, and from the left side, I'll say negative 10 pixels. So you see it moved to the left-hand side. So over here, I'm just playing around with this particular dev tools over here. So these changes do not apply to our code. So I have to actually save it in my code over here. So I'm going to come over here, create head, and over here header, and just paste all of this CSS that I've experimented with. Save, refresh, and this behavior is stuck. Now another property that we have is position fixed, right? The value is fixed. So I'm going to apply it on the sidebar over here. So I'm going to come over here, make this big, and I'm going to set this position to fixed. All right. Now when I do that, it seems like that it got fixed to, I don't know what happened. It just moved on the left-hand side, right? So let's see what happens if I scroll down. So you see, if I'm scrolling up or down, this location of this particular element seems to be fixed on whatever location it was on. Even when I scroll up or down, the position is not changing. Now I want this on the right-hand side. So I can say right and then 0. So basically it gets stuck to the rightmost of the entire page. Now the reason it has this space over here is because it has margins around it. So if I did not have margins, that would be gone as well, right? So let's say this is very handy when you have, let's say, some kind of sidebar, and let's say if you're scrolling up and down, you still want those menu items or those links or sidebar items to be shown. So a good example is actually on this particular documentation page. So if I'm scrolling up and down, a lot of times, so you see I'm over here, this particular image, this particular ad does not move. I don't know what properties they've used over here, but that's the kind of behavior that fixed would have. Moving on, there is a sister or maybe a brother property of fixed, which is actually called sticky. So we're going to apply it over here. So let's see what happens. But before that, I'm just going to actually copy this and apply it to the aside in our code. So aside, and I copy this or paste it, save, refresh, and you see that behavior should be in our code over here. Perfect. Now let's see what sticky does over here. So I'm going to come over here and set this to position sticky. I do that, and let's see what happens. If I scroll up and down, it doesn't seem to actually do anything, all right? So if I even keep on scrolling, nothing happens. And the reason, again, for that is that the position sticky doesn't do anything unless you actually set some kind of offset. And offset, when I say offset, I really mean the top position, bottom position, right or left position of it. So let's say if I say top is 0 pixels, what happens? Nothing happened, right? So let's say if I scroll up and down, nothing's happening. But actually something happened right there. So you see when I'm scrolling up and down, nothing happens. But as the moment happens when this particular element is going to get off the screen, it actually resets to it sticks, or the position gets sticky to whatever offset was mentioned, which is top 0 pixels. So top 0 pixels is basically on top of the page. So it gets stuck to the top of the page, right? You see, it's not going away, right? So let's say if you want to get sticky to the bottom of the page, you can do that as well. You can say bottom 0, but let's say if you want to get sticky on the top left, you can say 0 pixels here. And if I try to do that, you see the left is not taking effect because the element is actually not getting off the page on the left hand side. It's only on the top. So let's say if I try doing this, if I make it very small, I mean, I cannot make it very small, just that's the smallest it goes. But let's say if it was getting very small, it would actually it will get sticky on the left hand side as well. So let's say if you do not want it actually stuck to the very top, let's say you want some 10 pixels over here. So you see it's 10 pixels worth of space. But in normal circumstances, when it's inside this viewable location or the viewport, it will just act normal like such. All right, so that's what sticky is, which very similar to fixed, but that's what sticky does. It only takes effect when it's getting out of the page. So we're going to apply this to our element, which is H1, and paste it over here. Now let me show you one more example for the sticky over here. So I'm going to refresh and the effect is there. And we can actually apply the sticky behavior on the footer as well over here. So I'm going to come in over here and just apply this position to be sticky and make the bottom to 0 pixels. All right, 0 pixels. And that's it. And you seems like that nothing is changing over here because it's inside the viewable area. But let's say if I scroll up, you see if I scroll up and I make this big, sorry, just want to close this up. And if I'm scrolling up, you see the footer is stuck to the bottom of the viewable area. So this is very handy. Let's say in many websites, the footer is always visible, right? Or the header is always visible, right? So that's a good behavior to have. Now, if I scroll down, it's still there. But if I go to the very bottom, it kind of snaps into its regular location. So that's a very good behavior to have for sticky for these kind of footers. So I'm going to code that behavior over here as well. Position sticky and bottom 0. Save, refresh, and that behavior is there. Now that's pretty much it for this video. I'm going to talk to you in the next where I'm going to explain to you about absolute positions and one more thing we can do with absolute and relative together. All right, talk to you in the next.